What happens if you try to balance the government budget in a recession? And the book touched on this. I don't think they made a big enough point about it. I think it's really important.
You put the economy in a deeper.
You put the economy in a deeper recession. Why is that so?
Because you're focusing more on less spending, less packages for the economy, higher taxes.
And why will that make the recession worse?
Because people don't need that in a recession.
I'm looking for you to say one particular word.
No consumer spending.
Perfect. Spending will decrease. If you have a recession, what happens to the tax receipts the government receives? It falls. If it's income taxes, people don't have jobs or they're not working as many hours. If it's sales taxes, they don't have incomes, they're not buying as much stuff. Okay? What happens to your expenditures? And this is kind of important. If you want to balance the budget, what do you have to do?
Decrease expenses.
You have to decrease spending or else increase tax rates. If you do either one of these, aggregate demand, another term for spending, aggregate demand does what? Goes down. Shifts which way?
To the left.
Shifts to the left. And the result is the recession worsens. Does everyone understand the logic behind that? The only way you can balance your budget is to bring in more money or spend less money. And if you do either one or both of those, you decrease total spending in the economy and you make the recession worse. Okay so far? About every 5 years, there is some idiot in Washington, either in the Senate or in the House, sometimes both, who comes across and says, our government, our federal government has so much debt, we need to have a constitutional amendment, an amendment to the United States Constitution requiring our government to balance its budget. Why do you think I call them idiots?
Because then that means you have to do it all the time, even during a recession.
Yeah, it means during a recession you would make it worse. And by the way, just for grins, what if you had inflation? In a time of inflation,
You're gonna have surplus.
you'll be running a surplus, right? Why?
Because you have more revenues and less expenses.
Good. Everybody's working, incomes are going up, they're paying more taxes, they're doing more spending and paying sales tax. Okay? And you're running a surplus. If you have to balance your budget, what does that mean you need to do?
Cut spending.
Say again?
Cut spending.
Spend the surplus.
You've got too much money in government.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of it?
You
President.
Spend it. You increase spending. You need to spend that money, or you need to give people huge tax cuts.
This will drive.
What will that do? Huh?
Drive up the inflation even more.
That will increase aggregate demand, drive it to the right, and make inflation worse. You following me on that? Do you see why I call these people idiots? They're up there trying to run our country and they don't understand economics 101. They're so worried about heavy debt. What do we say about heavy debt? Heavy government debt. What do we say about it?
As long as the economy is working at its full capacity, it doesn't matter how much debt we have.
There's a reasonable limit. We don't want to go too high, but as long as the economy can pay the debt, pay the service on the debt and eventually pay it off. The size of the debt is not the issue. It's the size of the debt compared to the size of the economy. It's GDP. And if debt goes up but GDP goes up, there's no danger. okay?
What's the gap, the deficit?
What we really worry about is this becoming too great an issue, that this goes up faster than this.
Okay.
And the other thing we worry about is once the debt's up here, if GDP begins to fall, it's very difficult to pay that debt. Okay? What does inflation do with respect to our debt? It makes it easier to pay it. Because when people make more money and pay more taxes, we have more money to pay the debt. It's easy. So one way to get out of debt is to have high inflation. Because it's very cheap for the government to repay it. It's got other costs, high inflation does. Now, this is at the federal level, the national level. When we look at things at the state level, most of the states in the United States, including Florida, have a constitutional requirement to balance their budget every year. What do you suppose that does to our state economy as well as the nation when we slide into a recession? What do you suppose happened in Florida when we began the 2008-2009 recession?
Cut down spending.
Tax receipts stopped coming in. There was a global recession. Tourism fell off. Floridians stopped spending as much money. State governments, including county and city, they didn't have the money coming in. What did they have to do?
Cut programs.
They're not allowed to borrow. They've got to balance it.
Can they not get grants from the federal government?
They used to get a lot of money from the federal government. That stopped with Reagan.
Oh.
Raise taxes.
Raise taxes and or
Because,
cut spending. And so what happened in Florida? We laid off a lot of state employees. What does that do to a town like Gainesville? Do we have a lot of state employees in Gainesville, people who work for the state of Florida?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Less money in circulation.
And once you start laying off those employees, what does the multiplier effect do? It continues to decrease spending. It makes it progressively worse and worse and worse. So we've already got a built-in anchor that when our ship starts sinking with a recession, our economy, we've got an anchor that's pulling us further down. It's their state requirements for balanced budgets. Now maybe that's a good thing because maybe some states would be really stupid about borrowing money if they were allowed to. But nonetheless, it means when the economy goes into a recession, state governments are not going to help us get out of it.
Could you put something within the law that for emergency situations like a recession that things kick in?
You could try to. And that's what some people have proposed at the federal level, more reasonable people. But you find an awful lot of people who are going as far as a constitutional amendment, they are
Nothing.
so frightened and so ignorant, they want it every year, just like people. Yeah. It's called fiscal stupidity.